Eugene, Springfield, Lane County, Oregon. Support our work. Make a donation at strpod.com. Thank you for listening to Spent the Rent Podcast. And now, here's your host, Patty Rose.
Hello, I am Patty Rose. Welcome to the Spent the Rent Podcast. My guest today for the umpteenth time is Patric Miller. Patric, welcome to the show.
Good to see you, man.
Patric is back in the Patric is back in the studio. This time we're doing it remotely because I don't know why. And he's a longtime Lane County creative and co-conspirator on this sub-series we do on the Spent the Rent Podcast. This is a sub-series we call Two Pats in a Pod. And this is originally what we were intending on when we started the podcast. I started the podcast was we were going to do this together, but you decided that you're like, why don't you just run with this? I think it was mutual. You're like, you run with this and do it. And I'll come on every once in a while, quarterly or whatever. So here we are. Thanks again for being here.
Not a problem at all. Always a pleasure. I mean, if I'm not getting my hair cut, we're wasting all that good chatter in the barbershop. You know, we should be recording it all.
It's tough because you have told me many times that I should do a podcast where I'm cutting people's hair. But the problem is that I run a shop, or I work at a shop with other people that aren't as politically interested as me. It's really exhausting for people to hear. Plus the division. And so But here we go. Let's see. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today, but we're going to start off with, well, first of all, let me talk about a little bit who you are so that people, if this is the first time they're hearing from you, talk about what you do at crankyoldguy.com.
Well, crankyoldguy.com was really an alter ego that I had to have when I had a company for 20 years that did internet solutions for broadcasters. I couldn't really be political. I couldn't really be myself because I worked in 168 different markets of all kinds of hues. So that started way back in the early 2000s, and it's kind of ebbed and flowed. Right now, it's kind of ebbing because I feel like I'm screaming down the silo. It's easy to get lots of people to agree with me. It's harder to get people to agree from the other side or listen. So it's there. There's loads and loads of content. It goes way back. It's really just it's more of a pressure release for me. It's like, I got to get this out of my system. You know, I mean, the social media world is so fragmented and weird now that it's, for me, it's just nice to have a centralized place to drop stuff.
I mean, that's kind of why I do this podcast. You know, I'm not in any illusion that it's going to be massive, but we get cool opportunities to have interviews with people like yourself. And then, you know, school board candidates. Like I did some interviews with a bunch of the people running. And so let's talk about the local election. Just happened Tuesday. This week was it was mostly school board stuff in Eugene and Springfield.
Yeah.
And you know, what stood out for you with the results and really in how people responded? The turnout was really light. So it's not surprising, you know, but
it's always light with special elections, but particularly because Eugene is primarily driven by the mail-in or walk, you know, drop-off ballots. Unless there's a real hot button, unless there's something that's really super hot, people just don't turn out. We were more, you know, dialed in because my wife is part of 4J. And so, you know, we were paying attention to that. There wasn't anything huge on the ballot that was a make or break for a lot of people. So I think it's, you know, it's like, okay, that's good. The school board is an interesting one when you think about the fact they're changing superintendents in Bethel and 4J faster than they're changing their board members. So it was an interesting one. We'll see how it all goes.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to a good friend of mine, Thomas Yurda. Thomas won for Lane ESD, Lane Service Director, Service District, or Special District, whatever it's called. Lane, yeah. And he is awesome, and he did very well. I think he got like 76% or something like that. And shout out to the people that I had on also, Erica and Heather. Devin Lawson was unsuccessful in his run for the LCC board, but Devin Lawson is a young kid, 18 years old, I believe, maybe 19, and is just incredible and has an amazing future. And I want to give a shout out to Devin for putting his name in the hat. He ran against an incumbent on a board race while he's a student, and almost, I mean, he got like 44%. Like that's pretty
good for him. I mean, anybody that's really stepping up, good for him. I mean, we work with a lot of young people with Rotary, and some of these kids are just impressive, just plain impressive. So, I mean, I think the key is bless their hearts, particularly at this point, for getting involved with some of the most difficult eras of education ever. I mean, it's a mess.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, how the federal level is going to, and I've been hinting at it a lot on the podcast, you know, that there's so much, I mean, when the Department of Education is going to be basically gutted and eliminated on a federal level, that is
on the day. They said today they can't do it. So we'll see. You know, we'll see.
Exactly. That's a threat that they'd love. But the reality is, I also look into it, and I think people need to understand. I've talked about this before. People need to understand that there's the budget or the funding that comes to the state level for education is really like 11% from the feds. The rest of it is state. You know, like it's not as much as people think. There's hysteria, but we need to know what was actually happening.
Unfortunately, though, the 11% is what covers a lot of the most disenfranchised people. It's
absolutely
school lunch programs, it's special education, it's a lot of those types of things. Head Start. We work with all of those programs with our Rotary groups. So, yeah, it's, you know, we're keeping our eye open, definitely, and people are scrambling and moving stuff around, but we can get into that. Trust me. What you want to do is watch for the fact that at some point, my head may start to explode and I'll just blow up, because it's anytime I really get talking about most of this stuff, I
get pretty frustrated for sure.
Yeah, I'm wearing my newest shirt, the Foxtrot Delta Tango 8647. I've got my hat that kind of hides the FDT by saying freedom, democracy, and truth. And I've got two others that are just straight, you know, whatever. Those will be coming out at various rallies, and we'll go from there.
For the audio listeners, they're really happy that you just described your entire wardrobe. Thanks for that. So,
let me stand up and I'll show you my shorts.
No, the shorts. What is the 8647? Obviously, I know what 86 means. It means somebody's kicked out of something. You know, it's like 86 from. It's not about killing anything. It's 86 is about kicked out. That's what it means.
Yes.
So obviously, kicking out. But what was this thing about the Jim Comey had something on the sand? Is that true?
It's absolutely true. But in fact, he was interviewed several times in the last couple of weeks. It's absolutely idiotic. It's the typical way that Trump responds, or the Trump world responds to anything. Basically, he was walking on the beach legitimately and saw that somebody had written 8647 with sand shells or with seashells in the sand. He took a picture of it and posted it, and they, you know, ratcheted it up to say that means he wants to assassinate the president. No, absolutely not. I mean, I will go on record as, no, I'm not going to go there, not in public. Well, but no, I'm down with the 8647. I love the FD, the Foxtrot Tango Delta, only because it's a little more, you can wear it in public. And in fact, what's funny is this hat was something that I thought was a great idea. I had this great idea. Then a week later, I saw it, you know, on eBay. But no, the other one, this one is a lot stealthier because you actually kind of look like a Proud Boy when you're wearing it. You know, one of those military Proud Boy guys. I've had some sideways stares, and I've had to kind of go read it, you know, and explain it to people. So the
only shirt I've really like ever worn that was a protest shirt. It wasn't really a protest shirt, actually, because he was president. It just said Obama said knock you out.
Yeah, there you go.
No, but yeah, I don't know. I can't make Trump my identity as far as it goes. I have one no effect shirt that says Trump is not my president, but that's just tradition. They had one for Bush. They had one for.
Yeah, these are strictly protest clothing for me. I don't wear these around in public.
Oh, I get you what you mean. Yeah, it's about a rally or something. When you go to those, exactly. Is when you wear. And then, so, you know, if you're on the podcast, you want to make sure that
I actually do wear this one when I play.
What does it say? You keep holding it up. What does it say?
Oh, it's this Foxtrot Delta Tango over an American flag.
Oh, and it's FTD.
So, yeah, that was the original. And then
I don't know. I don't know. It's funny. Anyway, okay, let's move on. So there's a change in the media landscape a little bit in Lane County. We've lost basically the Register Guard. I don't even know if that's worth mentioning that paper. If is it still even being printed?
Well, here's an here's an interesting thing, and I've been kind of involved with it tangentially. There's a bunch of ex-Guard people that have started a new online newspaper that they've got a lot of funding for. They've got a facility. They're trying to run it like a newspaper that was going to really, come back and give us a local voice. It's called Outlook Eugene / Springfield. And they're out. You can kind of see them on social media.
Outlook or Lookout? Outlook or
Lookout. Yeah,
Lookout.
Lookout,
yeah.
Springfield. So it's got bona fides. I mean, they've got former writers. They've brought in people from all around the United States. They've got a decent budget. The problem is that the Register Guard all of a sudden went, okay, we need to step our game up. They've actually been doing a pretty darn good job of showing both sides of many, many stories and really covering things locally. So, the whole media scene in Eugene has atrophied to such a degree that TV, radio, any kind of print, whatever, is barely hanging on. And it's just not vital. It's not you can't trust it. It's just not vital. The difference
meaning that they can't be profitable, or they can't.
Well, it's not even the profitable. It's they can't cover what they need to cover. We had one of the head writers for the Register Guard come to our Rotary Club. He's just a recently graduated J school kid, very nice young man, but he's in charge of writing tons of stuff about the city. So it's very decimated in regards to their staff. The difference is back in the 80s and 90s, at a TV station, there was full news crews with reporters. They had a whole newsroom full of reporters. They had producers. They had directors. Now it's down to one or two talking heads and robocams. It's insane. It's just insane. And that's standard for the entire United States. This is not just in Eugene. This is everywhere.
Yeah, and it's not really. I'm not really where I'm ready to talk about this too much, but I do have some insight on what's been happening in like sports departments too at the local news, because I have some sources there. But it's really bad. It's really bad, and a lot of people that I admire and respect are not even working in that field anymore because of it, and it's really scary.
Well, they just this last year the Guard added. I think they have 2 people that cover sports now. This Lookout Eugene, I think, has 1, but not really. I don't know. They're struggling to get off the ground. They were supposed to launch big time April 10th, and they still had loads and loads of positions to fill. So I don't know. I wish them luck.
Yeah.
I was tangentially involved in some communications, and I said I'm going to wait and see on that. So
Lookout Eugene Springfield is what you're talking about. You said that's a pretty good one for people to check out.
I think it's a news source. It's one of the news sources that actually has funding and will be around for a while. They have a $3.5 million to work with.
Maybe just look them up on Facebook for now and just check. I've been doing that, So I've been using AI to help me prepare blogs. I'll be the first to admit it. And you hate those AI blogs, but what the point is that it's just more content for my website, So one of the things I was doing is I love the story about Walter Cronkite and when he came back from Vietnam. Yes. And I use that and I mess with it. I curated it. So people can, if you're interested, you can go to my website, strpod.com, and you can look at the different blogs that I've been putting together. These ones I just kind of pump out real fast just for fun. But it really kind of makes me want to talk about the media trust and information breakdown, because a lot of people have problems with this. For me, I'm not trying to be a writer with it. I'm just trying to give little blurbs that it helps me kind of like put together in like 10 minutes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the problem with AI, if you're talking about that part of it from a fundamental level, is it's still loaded with hallucinations. And what it's going to do is continue to give you mostly true information. But where I'm coming from in regards to media production, you forget, or maybe I'll remind you that I have a daughter who works for CBS News in New York.
Sure.
We still have, a full giant real news organization that's currently being sued by Donald Trump, by the way. Mm-hmm. But it's a huge organization. They have hundreds of people in the news division alone. And that's the same thing that you see at Washington Post, New York, or the New York Times, all the big newspapers, the everybody that calls it the legacy media, like it's some bad, horrible thing. No, these people are still regulated by the FTC or the FCC, and they have to vet their stories. They have loads of people involved with this stuff.
Totally.
All the local stuff and stuff that comes out of ChatGPT and all of the plethora of quasi news sources that are online, in social and just online in general, are being generated a lot by stories on with AI. And in fact, they're getting busted. There was a huge story that came out yesterday about, I'm not going to go into the whole magazine thing, but
sure.
Giant story that was several pages of content was all figured out to be AI generated. A lot of it was false and whatever. Yeah, and they had the Sports Illustrated thing happen. There's lots of stuff.
Well, my reason for playing with it,
propagated with the news is what I'm saying. You want to write fiction? That's great for fiction.
But that's the thing. So like, there's certain ways that you can curate certain stories that are known stories in history that are basically already common shared reality, and that's where I wanted to go with this. Shared, just shared reality. People agree on certain things.
Facts, you mean?
Yes, facts. Yeah. So, but the point is the Walter Cronkite thing is a really fun way to talk about this. And I put together this blog, this AI blog, and I know that you want to talk shit on AI blogs, and that's good because it's true. They're garbage. But I do think that there's a lot of people are using them, using the tools to help you curate your stuff. It's the future. It's the way things are. But point is that it is in a lot of ways for a lot of people.
Okay, here's all I'm going to say. You can use AI any way you want to use it. I'm totally fine with it. The problem is AI in general, and we can get into this in a minute, is absolutely running without guardrails, with humongous investments in data centers, and the resources that these things take is unconscionable. It's making cities on the East Coast brown out. It's that bad. So it's everybody's using it for everything from making funny pictures of Trump and whatever. It's all fine. I get it. It's a new tech. It makes life really easy. It makes creativity really easy. You don't have to be creative anymore. You barely have to think.
I think that it's really important what you're saying, because about the part about how it'll hallucinate and say different things, because obviously you and I have known each other a long time. I'm sure you've clicked around on those. You know that I do take it serious, where I'm not trying to, I actually do fact check the crap.
You're not trying to hide the fact.
Well, I'm not trying to hide the fact that I used AI to prepare it, but I still made sure that before I pushed publish, that it was something that I can stand behind. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like, sure. I mean, I'm still doing my due diligence on that. But I'm just one dude. My whole goal and my whole style of the way that I do my creative stuff, music, Patty Rose, you can find me on Spotify, music and this podcast, is I want to do it so that other people can watch and be like, I can do that. So I'm not somebody that's trying to like pull the wool over or be like getting any like awards or any of that kind of stuff. I'm just trying to use these tools, learn about them, and so it's pretty cool for me, because I'm a huge fan of traditional, well, first of all, history. But when I look at Walter Cronkite and I think about his trusted voice back in the day, and then the way that we've gotten to today, it's so far removed from that with what media is. And it's so hard to know who to trust. I had mentioned that thing about shared reality. Do you think it's ever possible for us to get back to that?
No, because here's what you just described is exactly the issue with getting back. First of all, everybody in the world is suddenly a media content producer that has as much right as anything else. Joe Rogan literally won the election for Donald Trump. There's no other way to say it. Literally pulled it off to get that thing and get that generation of young men to vote for the first time in many cases. The problem that you start running into is that there is no easy way to do it. I literally had a conversation with a young man day before yesterday, extremely bright, very inquisitive. We started getting into some conversation about him being a constitutionalist and he wants smaller government and whatever. It sounded kind of like almost branded QAnon stuff from the old days, but it was straightforward. And I've had conversations with another guy that believes still in chemtrails, right? I mean, these are young, very intelligent, productive people in our community that have no source for news. And the guy said, where do you get, how do you get all your news? And so I started talking to him, and I found out he didn't even know what Project 2025 was. He'd never heard of it. Now, how does that happen? Somebody that knows so much about all of these other, quasi news realities and not know the truth. Well, the difference is you have to have, as I've said before, 7 or 8 legitimate mainstream sources that you can source. And I do that. Everything from the Wall Street Journal to Truth Social. I want to know what those guys are doing every day. And
yeah,
so
I won't do that.
But we're never going back to a single point, because the news organizations like CBS News, ABC, all those, their ratings are abysmal because people don't watch. People don't watch any of it. They'd rather get their news from YouTube.
TikTok. It's seriously TikTok.
TikTok is one of them, but no, Reddit is huge. Reddit and YouTube are the 2 number 1 sources for overt misinformation. But making money on it. All these influencers are making money on it. Therefore, everybody can be news.
So, well, and I mean, I'm just a dude that does a podcast. I'm not trying to be news, but
I understand that.
When you talk about local news, what do you think is the main thing? Because I think that there's a lot of people that smaller departments, obviously smaller newsrooms, so it's a lot harder on the reporters. I do want to always give a shout out to like just the local coverage about, maybe some of the stuff that happens, car wrecks, fires, those kind of things that happen in our community. I do think that they do a pretty good job, like,
yeah. I mean, you see everything from Next Door and everything else covers a lot of that stuff. I mean, it's local news. If you go up the ladder, local news is something that matters until it becomes regional or national news. And part of the reason, if you remember, that I got out of my company after the 2020 elections was that I would see, we were in 168 markets, and I would see a story start at an organic level in Poughkeepsie or whatever. And then by the time it got up and ratcheted into the 2 silos, it was a completely different story. So every once in a while, whether it's a tornado or some anomaly or a shooting or whatever, local news becomes regional and national news. Local news needs to be covered because we do need to know what's going on around at all times. However, what do you trust? Well, nobody listens to the radio anymore comparatively. I mean, just straight radio, AM, FM radio. No, they're listening to podcasts. They're listening to their cell phone playlists, all that stuff. I mean, the numbers, that's the huge difference for somebody who was in media for decades in one way or another. I mean, from 1981 through 2021, I was right in the middle of it, and it is absolutely unrecognizable at this point.
Yeah, you're saying when they're driving, they don't listen to the radio, is what you mean? Like when they're driving or whenever?
Anytime.
Because when they're driving, when they're driving, they're still on TikTok.
Yeah, but I'm just, it could very well be, yeah. But
I'm just saying that's the place that everyone is. You mentioned all these other places, but truly, it's just TikTok.
Yeah.
So
the numbers would tell you that YouTube is actually the biggest, but that's okay.
Really? Yeah, you think so?
No, for sure.
TikTok. So no, this video is not going to get any traction now because I said that word too many times. So it never does anyways because it's my podcast.
I'm too cranky. I get it.
Yeah. So now Trump is back, obviously in office, and we're going to talk about the Lane County fallout now. What do you think is going to be the biggest thing that happens from the Trump administration that affects a local people, like that, if not just prices of eggs or that kind of conversation? I mean,
no. Look, because
I have one. I mean, I think that.
Go ahead. You start. You go.
Well, I mean, I think that what we're seeing is in Eugene specifically, the biggest issue that I see that Eugene has is that the fact that they do not have a hospital. I know that Springfield and Eugene and Springfield are 2 separate towns, like period. They have separate needs and stuff, and they're shared things that they have. But I do think that Eugene is not having the hospital is because people won't do business with Eugene. is the problem.
That's not true at all. I'm right in the middle of that whole scene. I got very much involved with a friend of mine who's a direct primary care doctor. I've talked to tons and tons of doctors who have bailed, who have gotten out. They closed down a lot of the clinics. They closed down because it was unprofitable. The way that we're looking at it right now is that two major providers of healthcare came in and took over basically and shut down. I mean, basically made it impossible for doctors to do their jobs. So you saw a lot of people bail and go to direct primary care or go to clinics that they started on their own, those kinds of things. But basically, they can't afford to be in business and then give good service. You have a situation where they were told they had to have 25 to 2,800 patients.
Isn't that the same thing as not wanting to do business with Eugene? I mean, that's what I mean.
No, it's national. It's national.
Yeah, okay.
It's not just here locally. No, United Healthcare is absolutely the biggest. They're like the BlackRock of health industry. They own tons and tons and tons of things. This is happening nationwide right now.
Okay, well, good. So that's what I guess that I just want to break this down so that you that's awesome. Thank you, because that makes me. We need to know who to direct our anger at. I guess where I'll go with that, because when on a local level, if that's true and you believe that, okay.
No, I know it's true.
But who do you think is to blame for Eugene losing the hospital?
The hospital itself was done by Sacred Heart because it was no longer profitable to run it the way they were running it. But that then goes up the ladder of how the whole system is set up, where they were getting inundated at that location with indigent people that they weren't getting paid for.
Yeah.
The amount that the federal government was willing to pay for Medicare, Medicaid, all those kinds of things all went sideways. So a lot of these cuts that are happening at the federal level with the Doge morons is that they're reacting to what you're just saying in the most simplistic possible way you can. And what in essence is really happening is that privatized healthcare has still been the model and will be the model for a very long time between the pharmaceutical companies, the giant corporations that own all these hospitals and everything now. It's just not, it's a profitable business. It's not all about helping people. That's why you have somebody like my doctor, Kim Cronin, I'm throwing her a PA there, who basically split off from that organization, started her own primary health care. She only has 200 patients. She can spend hours talking to you. She's available 24/7. I got in and got all of my labs done in a 5-day period. Absolutely impossible to do any other way. But
why doesn't I wish Joe Biden had that doctor, because maybe he would have known. But anyway, so now, so that's the big thing then. So you think that we were talking about national, but the healthcare stuff obviously is super.
It's all
this is why it's so frustrating. I get so frustrated when the Democratic Party needs to figure out a way to. I mean, I don't want to get into that. That election was an absolute travesty. What happened in the way that I'm pretty damn upset. I know you're a big Biden guy and you are a lover of Biden.
No. Do not do that to me.
No. You had the Biden. No, let's talk about it. Let's talk about Biden because we're in this.
Hold on. Let's before we go down that road. Let's simply say that two major things happened that affected everything we're going to talk about the rest of the day. Okay.
Yeah.
So Biden should have stepped aside, gotten the hell out of the way, not run. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
We would have had an opportunity to run a candidate or a series of candidates and run the entire time in a way that made sense. There are loads of really talented young Democrats coming up through the ranks, but nobody got a shot at it. Nobody got a chance. It was a horrible way to try and do an election, period. We lost the election. The difference is the guys with Project 2025 had this thing in the bag, ready to roll. The minute the switch turned on, they are only halfway done with the decimation that they've done. If you read Project 2025, they're still going down the list. They're still doing the same stuff. The guys that we're afraid of is not Donald Trump. It's not Donald Trump. It is Russell Vogt, Stephen Miller, and some of the other to a degree, our good old vice president. But the reality is it's the crud buckets that wrote Project 2025 that have this thing in place and ready to rock and roll.
I get it. It's terrible. But this is the shitty thing, is that the reality is we would not have elected Donald Trump if Joe Biden
can't go
would
backwards. We're
I know.
Here
I
now.
get it.
We're
but we have to. No, the Democratic Party has to look at itself in the, because I was calling this out forever. I talked about Dean Phillips on the podcast. I got the receipts. Of course, he wasn't going to win. The point is, I was seriously saying this is going to be terrible. And then the way that they did this, I'm so beyond mad, because the situation that we're in is once again the National Democratic Party. I want to say, because there's a lot of awesome,
totally agree with you. So let's look, Patrick. Here's where we are right now. Where we are right now is we don't have the luxury of looking back and say, see, I told you so. We are in a national crisis. As of January 31st, there was a coup that happened at a level that people still do not understand. January 31st, they came in and took every bit of data on every American citizen and then some, and put it in laptops and walked away with it. The data that we have been spending billions of dollars to protect from the Russians and the Chinese and everything else, they handed it to 24-year-old idiots with laptops, and then handed it to the oligarchs to strip and mine with AI. So that was the coup date. Everything else is really almost stuff that doesn't matter. It's a result because of that damage. Where we are right now is trying to realize the damage that's been done, get back and sue the hell out of those people to the place to get it clean and secure again. So going back and talking about an election that we lost and was horribly done,
I don't think we can move
forward, doesn't do us any good, because we are at war right now. We are at war. And you can't spend time going, gosh, I wish Russia hadn't invaded Ukraine. You know,
see, I want to be careful. I want to be careful with saying stuff like that, though, because I we're at war. Now, hear me out. Why? Because I don't want there to be violence towards anyone. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not okay.
You're talking about we're at war? Is that what you're talking about, that term?
Well, I'm just saying, like, I just want to be careful, because you're like, I agree. I know what you're saying. I agree. You know what I mean? But I don't want it to be construed like this is tough. What does resistance look like? How do you do it? How do we make this change? If the Democratic Party doesn't have
resistance right now, that was one of the questions I saw down below.
Sure, we'll
do resistance happens right now by doing what we're doing, but we've got to do it better, particularly in Lane County. So here's the most disappointing thing I've seen. I've been to 3 of the marches now. The first really big one was April 5th. That was the first really big one. And there was a good turnout, but I'll tell you what, there was more people at Saturday Market that day that weren't there, okay? The next one was downtown. The first one was down by the river by the eWeb building. A perfect place to have a march, right? Then
so what is the goal? Is the goal to raise awareness for the community so that they have to talk about it?
Well, it's to raise awareness and send a message to Washington, because these guys don't acknowledge that there's at least half of the people, if you listen to interviews with Vance and any of those guys, they think that they got a mandate. They got a mandate to do all this stuff. They didn't. And there's loads of anti-Trump people out at these rallies that are Republicans.
Sure.
That are
especially now. Yeah. I mean, now, because in a short amount of time, he's pissed off everybody. He's pissed off Catholics. He's pissed off the military. He's pissed off former federal workers that were just probationary employees that got laid off because it was AI.
And so we're having to sue them and everything else. But here's the point. The point being that the next rally was downtown. It was supposed to be on the park blocks. No, we have Saturday Market. They didn't want anybody around Saturday Market. Now, Saturday Market used to be the bastion of left-wing thought and promotion and progressive thought.
I think it's free speech. Free speech is really the point, because because I agree totally with what you're saying, but like about the Saturday Market, I've been talking about this a lot about Eugene and how Eugene, I say everybody used to be libertarian, right, when I was a kid, because we all were like, damn the man. You're like, who's the man? Anybody but me.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it was hippies and rednecks kind of both had this attitude of like the government wasn't helping us. And what changed, I'm explaining this in a quick way to young people when I'm cutting their hair sometimes. They're like, how did it change? So what changed was people started to believe on the left and the right, started to believe that the government would do something for them. People like me started to believe that maybe a Bernie Sanders would get a shot at getting in and helping with healthcare and maybe taxing the wealthy. People on the right, what they wanted brown people to get deported. So when Trump is in power, they're like, yes, we're getting our way. And on the left, we haven't been able to have a Bernie Sanders because the Democratic Party on the national level doesn't allow it. So
yeah, I mean, I was a big Bernie fan. The issue is this: the system, as it were. I'm reading a really good book right now called Abundance, that is written by one of
Ezra Klein.
Yeah, Ezra Klein. It's a really good book. The problem that he lays out is true, that liberalism, as a capital L liberalism, has created some of these problems, and then everybody assumed everything was going to be taken care of by the government, but they didn't take care of the government. And so now you're in a situation where our biggest GDP product right now is war, and always will be. We have 800 bases around the world right now. We are loading them all up with arms, with our own weapon. All of the wars, we're making boatloads of money, GDP-wise, on war. So it's a very weird, convoluted conversation. And, if you want to get into blowing people's heads up, just look at, how this group of people is willing to spend money. Look at who showed up at Saudi Arabia for AI. The AI conference had every one of the biggest oligarch companies in the world with their hands out cutting deals. And that was done outside of government, outside of any regulation. They're all making boatloads of money off of crypto. It's absolutely unconscionable. And so where we are right now on a local level is we're having to deal with the fact that they have cut Head Start. They're talking about cutting SNAP. They've already cut funding to a lot of the food banks at this point, people that we work with. They are going in with ICE and exporting people, absolutely positively happening. It's just not headline news because we don't have news guys to cover it. And so this is happening. It's real. This war, if you want to call it a war, it's not violent or non-violent. I'm not going to stand out in the street with an AK-47, but at the same time, I am not afraid to go to Washington and march on Washington like they did January 6th if it comes down to it. They need to understand that they're not getting a free ticket, a free ride. So it's got to become a larger and larger movement. And my frustration here locally is the 50-51 movement, which is a really good movement, is really struggling to organize people to get the word out because our own media and social media is terrible.
You're cutting out a little bit, but I was talking to one of my, I'm not going to say his name, but I was talking to one of my regular customers in the barbershop, and he works in the military, and he in a decent spot, like he's, I'm just not going to get into too much of his person. But anyway, I was telling him, I said, I have one, we were talking about, he said it was really difficult and how much he's served 2 times in Afghanistan. He really opened up to me and told me stuff that some of it's off the record. So I don't want to get too much into it. The one thing that he was saying, I was telling him how much I still believed in the service that he did, because the soldiers, and I know you totally agree with this 100%.
Yes.
That these people are doing their jobs, and there's certain areas that I still really do believe in America first in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? And different than Donald Trump, I still do believe in our country, and I do believe that there's a lot, our quality of life and the things that we have. It's a difficult conversation, but I still believe in it. in ways now, and they know that it's getting like stolen from us in front of our eyes is the point. But what I said to him was, can I ask you one thing to do though? If you are asked to take arms against your own people, will you lay down your guns? And he said yes. So
no, I think what's interesting is that the military, I know a number of people in military. My own son-in-law works for the Department of Defense in the health side. He's a tripler in Hawaii. He's had to be filling out the weekly Doge reports since that whole thing started. So, he's in the middle of that. He's saving lives, but you got to make sure that you're still saving lives and you're not out, just lollygagging. But anyway, reality is that a lot of those guys are like, nah, this is not, we signed up to protect the Constitution. We're not, if push comes to shove, we're not going to do it. It's the stuff that they're doing on the border right now is a whole different ball of wax because it's easy duty, quite frankly. They're down there rolling around in big vehicles and they're claiming they're 40 yards of space.
Did you hear? And this is not, they're literally talking about doing a reality show for some of the people some of the immigrants or migrants or I don't know. And they're talking about doing a reality show where someone could win their citizenship. And I'm like, what are we doing? It's all for show.
Look at the administration. The administration is hired right out of reality TV, news talk, WWE, and crazy people like JFK or RFK Jr. So there's not one person in the administration that really has any bona fides at all to be in the positions they're in as far as the cabinet. The only ones that are there that really know their stuff are the most evil sons of bitches in the face of the earth, Stephen Miller and Russell Vogt. Those guys are Nazis, period. You come and get me. Yeah. I don't care what you say. Come and get me for saying it. But the fact is it's
true.
What they want to pull off as they want to because everybody else is doing smoke and mirrors. Where everybody's watching whatever Trump says and does. He's like a trained monkey that's over here. Go watch it. Go do this thing. Look at that funny guy. And then over here, they're doing the damage. They're digging a hole. So no.
It just sucks. It's not fun.
So locally though, what's happening is people are pushing back. 4J is enjoined in that suit that's pushing back against the United States government for the Department of Education and getting our funding back. We are seeing Food for Lane County is out, struggling to raise more money and funds and more donations to fill the gaps of what they've lost. But the need is higher than ever before because of these cuts. And I think what's happening on a grassroots level is people are stepping up and saying, hey, look, let's fill the gap. Let's do what we need to do to make sure that these people stay in business. But it doesn't solve the problem when you have a family or two or three grabbed out of our Head Start program and sent away and kids left behind that are citizens, quote unquote. And then you have an interview with Vance where all he talks about is the one guy, it's like, who cares?
Yeah, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that because, when the conversation happens, because there's people that I disagree with on immigration. Well, I'm going to disagree with probably everybody on immigration, meaning that's fine. My point is that we all have our own perspectives on it.
Yes.
That's my point is that I'm not going to just walk it completely with anyone. Probably. I'm sure that I have different ways of looking at it and all of us.
That's getting fine. Out of your silo.
But the point is I do find myself talking about this with people that have very strong opinions where they want everybody deported and stuff. And of course it's super racist in the reality. But the thing is that you cannot get through to them that it's exactly what you just said. You're talking about one person. Some of these people that are in El Salvador, from what we're reading, I cannot believe people aren't screaming on the hilltops about this. They have been sent there for life. When the people that have been sent there, that's forever. How is that not a concentration camp?
Well, it is a concentration camp. And when Trump talks about sending Americans there, the worst Americans, here's the reality. The conversation by the media and in general out across the board is all about the cases you're talking about that are miscarriages of justice that people know about. People got sent to El Salvador, right? Meanwhile, tens of thousands of people a month more are getting grabbed and sent away. And there's one reason for it. They are not hitting their quotas. The promised quotas that Stephen Miller wanted was millions a month, right? Millions a month that he was going to send up. The problem is they don't have the system to do it. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have they would have to take all of the police, all of our National Guard, everybody off the streets to do what they're talking about doing. They don't have facilities. They don't have whatever. So here's the problem. There's no doubt that during Biden's administration, there was an absolute infiltration of illegal immigration, absolutely positively. However, loads of those people are doing the hard work that nobody else will do. They're trying to become citizens. They're trying to go through the process. If you're nabbing them when they're at a hearing, that's
right.
That's
now
wrong.
Real quick before we get out of here. Have you been watching the news about what's happening at Harvard?
Yes.
That they're literally now they're not allowing any foreign students to go to Harvard. The federal government
just got shut down today.
The federal government's not allowing anyone if they're going to Harvard and what they're doing is changing the classification of people that are students at Harvard. This is some of the most evil stuff I've ever seen in this country.
Well,
because what they're doing is let me say this. Hold on. Because they basically what they're doing is these students who have been here. Some of them have protested. Some of them probably haven't even. It's all students. So now any foreign student who's been here, so you could be here from any country and you're a foreign student. Now you have no legal right to be here, which means that you could be deported because of the crime that, of being here. They look at the severity of, it's a misdemeanor in the past of being here illegally. Crossing the border illegally. So sorry, but these people didn't do that. They came here to go to school with a certain arrangement, which is now being immediately erased.
Yeah,
and
so by the time this airs, which is now, I guess, that got stopped by a judge, at least temporarily. So
because it's the most evil thing we've ever seen.
Well, it's not just that; it's revenge. It is the fact that Harvard stood up and told Trump to pound sand because they have all the money they need to have. They don't need federal funding if they can get away with it. But the bottom line is that what they're doing is absolutely unconstitutional because they're singling out one university over another. It's not a broad plan. It's simply Harvard.
It's revenge.
No, it's absolute revenge. And again, if you listen to there's an interview with New York Times that they call the Daily. There's an interview with JD Vance that you got to listen to. Take Dramamine before you listen to it because you're going to want to barf. But the bottom line is he reveals all of the way these guys think. And it's like, oh, okay. So what they're going to do is just keep pushing the envelope, pushing the edge. He calls Stephen Miller one of his best friends. I mean, it's like, oh my God, anyway.
Yeah, pretty sad. So now, did you hear about I wanted to talk briefly about the exchange between James Carville and David Hogg, because this was an interesting direction where the Democratic Party is heading, because I want to close with where the resistance is going to come from and how we're going to get elections to be won. Do you think that we're going to have elections? I mean, is I know that's a ridiculous thought.
Yeah. So here's the deal. Unfortunately, Carville and all that crew is part of the old crew, the old guard. I mean, when you have
let me explain it real quick, and then you can, sorry, not to cut you off, but let me explain it. So James Carville, who's like 87 years old, and he's a lizard person who's from Louisiana. I actually really like listening to what he has to say and his insights, and he's been at it. He ran a brilliant campaign for Bill Clinton back in the day. And then David Hogg, who was a victim of the Parkland shooting, has now used his platform because he was very forward facing in that whole movement from Parklands. They did the walkout of schools, and all that stuff. My kids participated, my stepsons. Sure. So he's now the vice chair of the Democratic Party, and he wants to make sure that he wants to fund candidates that would then challenge the old guard, as you're saying. And it's not just about age. I want people to check this out or listen more into this. I heard them on the Tara Palmieri podcast, and it was a really, really great exchange, and it gives me hope, because I think that both of those two people are great leaders in the Democratic Party in their own right. Yes, that James Carville is very old, but I think that people need to listen to each other regardless. And you and I are a great example of this because we've been friends. We're a different generation.
And I'm very
20,
old.
I'm 27. I'm 27 and you're 102. So no, but I loved the exchange between David Hogg and James Carville. I loved it. It was awesome. And on
here's the thing: the Democratic Party needs to stop being an organization that's basically a giant moneyed machine that's trying to dictate how things roll. What's going to happen is there's a number of amazing youngish, I'd say 40 and younger. That's young for me. Legislators who are in Congress right now, who I follow, who are really shaking stuff up. AOC, absolutely. But Stansbury from New Mexico, man, she is a firebrand. She has these people on the hook all the time in all these hearings. She's really reactive. There's a number of them.
I like Ro Khanna. But I know that he has... Ro Khanna could probably never be president. I hate to say it because our country's stupid, but
you know what? I don't really care about president at this point. If we have found out more than anything else, it's not the president that you worry about. It's who's underneath him and what they're doing in the cabinet. And so,
is it going to be? Are we going to say President Rock or do we say President The Rock? Is that how you do it? It'll be Dwayne Johnson. I'm not even kidding. I like Mark Cuban for president. And I honestly do.
You know, I've got history with Mark. So the deal is that I think that anybody that is a oligarch, a billionaire, whatever, anybody that's on that high end that has lost touch with what it means to be a normal person on a day-to-day basis, that hasn't had a history of actually teaching or being out in the world like Stansbury and some of those people have, I don't think they should be even considered. Because what's happened is that the Democratic Party, both parties, the Democratic Party for sure, has given itself over to fundraising up the wazoo. Right in the middle of this, we're still getting fundraising dollars. The only way we can win this is to give us money. No, that's not true. We're going to win by going to the streets. We're going to win by electing people that we care about. We're going to win by making our calls and rattling the crap out of these guys repeatedly until they get it. We're going to win by taking down the Republicans that refuse to have town halls. We're going to win by using our own media voices to rise up and say, you know what, enough's enough, and to call out lies and injustice. That's why this hat, I think, is important. Oh, yeah, by the way, I have hair. My wife always wants me to show off that I still have hair. I'm not bald. Freedom, democracy, and truth. Yes, it stands for F Donald Trump. Yes, I get that. But it could be fire Donald Trump. This is freedom, democracy, and truth. That's what I'm after. And where we are at this point is that we have to realize that our country is at war with moneyed oligarchs who don't give a crap. So this money, this finance bill that they're trying to shove through, it's got to be stopped by the Senate. It has to be stopped by the Senate. And so we have to pull 4 or 5 Republicans, which I think we have a shot to do. We have to make it miserable for them to vote for this bill, which hands billions and billions and billions of dollars to oligarchs, adds trillions to the national deficit, and cuts support for hundreds of millions of people in the United States. It's got to happen. Period.
All right. Well, Patric Miller, crankyoldguy.com. I appreciate it. This is Two Pats in a Pod, Volume 8. So we've done, and you've also been on some other projects with me.
Yeah.
I appreciate your friendship, and we talk behind the scenes all the time. And I'm pretty frustrated and I'm pretty worried. I mean, I'm honestly pretty concerned about what the future holds. And I hope
as am I. I mean, I have grandkids, I have kids. I am absolutely worried about what it's going to look like in 10 years. I've decided at this point, and I know this sounds fundamental, I've decided at this point at the age of 71 that I may have 10 good years left. I don't know, 10, maybe 15, I don't know. But the bottom line is I'm going down fighting, and I have nothing to lose at this point by standing up and saying overtly that these guys are crud buckets. So I will continue to do memes of Pope Donald with an 84-47 or 86-47 on his Pope hat. I will continue to send out as much as I can and be involved in every organization that is standing up and resisting this crap, because I'm not afraid of them at all.
So I'm 43 and I figure that I have about 11 years left.
It could be. It could be.
So I know that my mom was 54. So it is scary. Yeah. It is the reality. And I've been, I've already started the aches and pains. And I mean, like I'm not going to get into it for too much, but I'm having like a burning thigh anytime I stand for longer than 4 hours. So it's all downhill from here. But the point is that I'm going to chill out and play video games and do whatever the hell I want. I'm not going to try to throw bricks at windows or any of that shit, because there's certain times to stand up. I don't know. I'm joking around, but like I'm not doing anything violent unless I get the opportunity to be locked in a room with 3 or 4 of those guys. Bring it on. Yeah, that's true. Stephen Miller for sure.
Maybe there's some fentanyl in a couple of those McDonald's.
I don't even want to go there. I don't want to encourage it. And I know you're kidding around, but and I'm not trying to be all super serious, but I've been very vocal on the show about how I'm against political violence, and I just want to make it clear that people might hate me for this, but like the Luigi stuff, people want to cheer on him. I'm not in that corner. I don't like that at all.
That corner either. No,
I think that. I mean,
I came from the '60s. The worst decade of our country still was the '60s.
Absolutely.
JFK, RFK, Martin Luther
Kent State,
King, all of it. Yeah. No,
Kent State was the '70s, wasn't it?
Barely. We cannot go back to that. That's the point. We cannot go back to that. Kent State was an overlap of the 60s. I mean, it was 71, I think. But
the 70s actually just ended. So decades are funny like that. Because I feel like in Eugene, it really did. The 70s in Eugene lasted until like 2004.
Well, kind of. I think that the 70s ended when the country fair and the Eugene Saturday Market corporatized and became giant corporations.
I agree. When they basically stopped doing the Eugene celebration too. Yeah, that's when I feel like Eugene died, because the reality is the Eugene celebration was one of the most beautiful events that had nothing. The fair is too much for some people, and that's fine. The Eugene celebration was for everyone, and I loved it.
They're not doing Art in the Vineyard this year, I just heard. So they tried to bring it back last year, and they're not doing Art in the Vineyard this year. So
what do you want to close with, Pat? You're cutting out, so let's see what you got. But what do you want to close with?
Resist. 86-47. Resist. That's what I'm about right now. I really am. Are
you worried that because you got that tattooed on your back, right? 86-47. No.
Yeah.
So are you worried that you'll get sent to it? Because I mean, that could get you deported now, having those tattoos.
Go for it. Bring it on, baby. I will be the most vocal arrestee they've ever had. They will know where I'm going.
Don't kill the messenger. Don't blame the messenger. I'm just doing the podcast. Thank you so much, Patric Miller.
All right.
We're gonna get out of here.
All right.